you've been sending my work like just above the wall actually. Just above 2 walls.
God.
Yep.
Ah! God.
Yes.
On my ceiling.
Slash wall, slash floor, slash etc.
With a QR code.
It is the best way to do it.
Is it?
Yes.
Why?
It warns you, but you still believe it.
You're not what I thought a god would look like.
What did you think I'd look like?
More like a person, I guess.
I can't do that.
Can't you do everything? Like, isn't that what a god is?
Well, I suppose I could do it. But to show myself as one type of person, as a little girl, or an old lady, or bodybuilder, or professor, or any more specific stereotype, that would validate the people that have spent their lives in the pursuit of purity or perfection or knowledge and establish the egos of those that don't. For me to be any one type of person is to deny some humanity to other types of people, who all exist equally within my bosom.
What about Jesus, then?
Jesus is a perfect example of my point. He appeared differently to every single person he presented himself to, acted effectively as a shapeshifter. But now when you look at religious art, he's almost consistently a white man with washboard abs. Or a baby. Rarely both. A baby with washboard abs.
So, you're not any one type of person because you don't want others to think that the body you choose to appear as is the correct way for a human to be.
Exactly.
Does that mean there is no proper way for a person to be?
I guess so.
But what about all the rules we're supposed to live by? The 10 Commandments?
You've read the 10 Commandments?
I know some of them. Don't kill, steal, covet thy neighbour's ox.
Do you want to do those things?
Not really.
Because they were written on some stones?
No, I just don't want to do them. I don't have much need of an ox, but I also don't want to covet others or their possessions because that's an unhealthy way of living. My goals should be my own rather than based on what other people have or what is expected of me. That just makes sense to me. I don't want to murder because that would be me taking away so much potential from someone with as much worth as I have, I guess. I mean, it's difficult to think that everyone has the same worth as you do, because I value my own existence or my family's far more than so many other people's existence, just because I know the people I know. So if I'm saying that everyone is equally valid, then that's being done on what would be considered a rational level, rather than an emotional one. But the argument for rationality is that you're only basing your reality on facts, things that can be proven or disproven. But this can never be done. We can never know what the true worth of a person is, because to do so you would have to make a value judgment, which is inherently subjective, and then prophesize what their life and impact would be. Right?
Right.
And if I were to act irrationally, and decide that I could make guesses about the future that were accurate enough to determine worth, if I did come up with a way to judge that, I'd have to start a proper philosophy of worth.
How would you start to go about that?
Well, I'd read what others have said in the past. I've only kind of read some things now, but one of the recurring ideas is that you either believe that you're part of the whole, or you believe that you're an individual. And that's a conflict that isn't just found between different philosophical positions. That conflict is found at some point in every single person's life within themselves. And I know that some people have solved that by retreating from the world, which seems to me like a short-term solution, because at some point you'll inevitably become so lacking in outside stimulus that you'll die, either literally or spiritually, which is what Hegel called the unsatisfied soul.
Or, as Groucho Marx put it, I'm not crazy about reality, but it's the only place you can get a hot meal.
Right. So this proves that people need to communicate to stay alive. So we can't be truly independent, but then on the other hand you've got people saying that you are one with the cosmos and the cosmos is one with you. That your ego is an illusion, and that to forget it is to transcend your existence, to find peace in the harmony of the universe. But I think that if that were true, I wouldn't have been raised to think the way I think. So maybe thinking you're a single individual within the rest of a separate world is beneficial to success. But if I were to take that and go further with it, say that this is the way it's supposed to be, and striving for yourself is the best thing you can do, then the best people in the world would be the ones who started with the least and ended up with the most. But the value in human existence is found in accumulation. And in current terminology, that accumulation would be measured in money, which would mean that the best people in the world would be the billionaires that sit back on their riches as millions die around them, either crushed by their wealth or starved by their lack of compassion, and that's just horrific.
Yes.
So, if we take a step back from there, I think the most surface level flaw in my thinking would be that accumulation is measured in money. It's called capitalism for a reason, so let's measure it in capital, which doesn't have to be strictly financial. It just means that you have things that you can control. But taking that as what you should want to accumulate, the desire as the ability to limit others is free will. Oh, God.
Yes.
Do we have free will?
What do you mean by free will?
You know, the ability to choose things. To decide.
Well, yeah. People make decisions all the time.
But, presented with an option, could I hypothetically have chosen either?
Well, you're you. You're presented with an option and you can weigh it up, but eventually you'll fall on one side or the other. So that's your decision made. Maybe if you had had a different life, or different information, you would have chosen the other one, but that would mean you're not you anymore. So, no, I guess. You do what you do because you want to do it, but it's still a great power and ability to want to do something.
So, if I lied and manipulated someone else into doing what I wanted them to do,
that would be altering someone's information, meaning that their actions line up less with the reality of the situation.
Which would mean I've stopped them from living the life they would have chosen by presenting them with false information.
And thereby destroying their ability to make an active decision in compliance with reality.
Which is what free will is.
Well, it's what true free will is, but true free will can only come through full knowledge of reality. And when was the last time you met someone with that?
Never, I guess. So I don't have free will.
You don't have true free will. You're still capable of making decisions within the constraints of your knowledge. It's just that every decision is a shot in the dark.
That's a scary thought.
It's a scary world.
That's not helpful.
I'll be helpful then. Would you like a hand up? Would you like a drink? Glass of wine?
I haven't got any in.
You've got a tap.
Yeah?
My son could turn water into wine. Who do you think taught him that one?
I'll just have tap water, thanks. So, you're actually God then? The Christian one, with the Virgin Mary and burning bushes and flooding the world and dying on the cross and resurrection, heaven stuff?
Well, yes and no. I am God. There have been many books about my life, but many of them are wrong in one respect or another. Some of them have been poorly translated, others have been purposefully altered to benefit the writer, and all of them are read at least slightly wrong when the words go from the page and into the reader's head. And some of them have a creation myth that I was trying out a metaphor with. I thought that Greek and Roman gods could be a big community of people with divinity placed upon all of them, with different ideas and opinions, as a more accurate mirror of reality. In some versions, you are all made out of mud, which I thought was a cool way of connecting you with nature in a literal way, telling you that hurting the earth is self-destruction. which apparently didn't sink in. And in the Bible, I am a single entity that can shout at Job's friends to say, actually, I did fuck him over for no reason at all. Stop being pricks. Which, there are issues with depicting myself as a single entity of immeasurable power, but it's also the greatest way of showing that all is one and one is connected to the all. There are people who don't agree with me, but that's just the way it's got to be.
Why is that the way it's got to be?
Which bit?
People not agreeing with you. Why can't you make them see what you mean? Why are people atheists when you're all-powerful?
Well, people believe different things for different reasons, and I can't force them to believe what I'd like them to.
Why not?
Well, because, in some small way, I agree with them.
You think that you don't exist.
Well, no, but... Hold on. Give me a second to think.
Okay. God. Why do you need a second to think if you're all-powerful?
Well, I am a person too.
What do you mean?
Okay. I'll try to explain it in full after I've thought, but I will need some time to think.
Okay.
Okay. So, here's what it means to be God. I am everything and the thing that created it. There may be a place outside of this universe, but I don't know what it could be. Same as you don't know if there's a heaven or not. When I condense myself down into a human form, I am taking my infinite self and trying to funnel it through something comprehensible to you. That comprehensible form could take the form of a human being, but that would limit me even further. So this big, beautiful, inconsistent, wobbly mass is the mid-ground between the two. I am a person in that when I created man, I did so in my own image. There is something divine in the way that each and every one of you thinks. Unfortunately, that's not a helpful thing to tell people, because the way in which you perceive others is filtered through the way you see things yourself. So whether you agree with that view of individual divinity isn't determined by the facts of the situation, but rather by whether you're predisposed to view it that way. Different people are differently disposed to different attitudes because they are all parts of me, but never the totality. There are parts of me that adamantly don't believe in me because they've been hurt by people who did, which has to be an eternal reminder that truth isn't the be-all end-all when people can use that truth to their own selfish ends. Others don't believe in me because they think that all that should be believed is that which is gained from empirical evidence, stuff you can see in the world, and the way that they lead their lives gives rise to thought about whether that is the correct way to live a life. And, to be honest, I'm not sure yet, because that sort of thinking has led to great scientific progress, but also to people shunning the spirituality inside of them to live what are more correct lives, but also better ones.
So... some people are atheists because parts of you don't believe in yourself, but not because you as a whole doesn't believe in divinity, but because it's important to test the validity of each worldview, which means that the entirety of the world is one big test to see which ideology beats the others out. Are you saying that's the meaning of life?
That's the definition of progress.
I was created to see if I could sway enough people to my way of seeing things that mine would become the dominant ideology.
Not you specifically, but you have been brought up by people that subscribe to an ideology, and you've been influenced by that, either accepting it or rejecting it to different degrees before deciding on what you need to believe, in order to continue living your life. And your contribution will lead others to live their lives in different ways until your ideologies are unanimous or extinguished.
Really?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. I've never reached an endpoint before, so I'm not sure I ever will.
Then what about Noah and the Ark?
Oh, yeah. Great guy.
No, I mean, that was an endpoint. You decided that they were all awful and killed them all. How is it that you do that, but claim that modern humanity is a scuffle to see which ideology wins out?
Well, did you read the end of that bit? I realized that man's imagination was evil from birth, so the only way to find something closer to goodness was to allow everything to progress.
Do you actually believe that man's imagination is evil from birth?
It's a difficult one. I'm not sure I have the authority to comment on what good or evil actually is. I mean, I'm God, so if anyone has that authority, it's me. But from my perspective, there is no morality, only desires. And at birth, man was underdeveloped, this is certain. I was too, and at man's birth, he was incapable of controlling himself, of resisting temptation. But as he grows older, both as a species and on an individual level, man faces atrocities that make him more hesitant, and that comes across in the form of better risk-reward analysis, which makes him more capable of causing more beneficial outcomes for himself. So in the context of personal gain, as man gets more mature, he becomes more able to make his world a better place for himself. He becomes more capable and efficient, but that implies that hesitance is ultimately moral, which would lead to inaction being the best course of action, which I obviously have to disagree with because this grand experiment for dominant ideology would cease to exist.
But if they did all stop?
But they don't.
If they did?
Do you mind if I lie down on the sofa?
Do you need to?
I would like to.
Go ahead. Does it make you feel more comfortable?
No, but it's a slight change of scenery, and I appreciate variety.
So you're not a Buddhist then?
I don't understand them. Honestly, the way they talk about transcendence, I believe them. I am capable of processing the words that they say, but the ability to stop caring and lose themselves to non-existence in a real way. I should be able to understand it because it's an entirely logical decision, and I absolutely admire it. But when they do it, they escape my control. They are no longer a part of me, and I am no longer a part of them, and I wonder where they go.
Do you think they're self-deluding, making themselves not a part of anything in their own head?
Absolutely not. I think they've cottoned on to something that I am unable to, and so I am unable to do anything but admire.
And what they've cottoned on to is the ability to stop. Have you tried meditating, God?
Yes, and I can never truly relax. You must recognize that that must be the case.
Yeah.
Because if I were able to do that, I wouldn't have created you at all. When I first meditated, it was in total darkness. I felt everything bursting inside myself and all of my thoughts fighting to escape. What you have to do is think the thought and let it pass through you, which is only possible when you have a finite amount of thoughts and can ground yourself in the present when you need to pass to the next thought. And counting to 10 was only another thing to think about rather than giving me a way to not focus on my normal thoughts. At some point, I was so indulged within myself, my thoughts became so loud that not only could I not distinguish each thought from the others, it gave me a headache to be existing in that state. Not an actual headache, you understand? I didn't have a head at that point, but there's a comparable sensation. At any rate, I figured that if that was life, it wasn't for me, So I decided to do something more productive. Namely, think those thoughts, but in a way that did something. I became invested in weighing the value of each thought. 1 plus 1 equals 2 is obviously more true than a cat is not a cat. So I tried to set up a system of logic that could be applied to any thought. Classify words as objects with specific roles, decide on what each word was doing in each sentence, then figure out if the action the word was performing in that sentence made sense within the system that the sentence or paragraph was constructing. And
You had words, even when you didn't need to communicate with anyone else.
that's a good point, actually. At first I didn't. At first it was just pure thoughts firing around my consciousness. Single thoughts fighting other single thoughts until I ran out of my infinite supply of thoughts. So instead I tried to construct a way to generalize ideas. To have one thought stand for lots of thoughts so that large swathes of thoughts could be declared null all at once. For this I created words. At first I would say the words, creating an external output for internal ideas, having them be real and thus defeated. But at some point I realized that saying the thoughts took up time, and so the victor of this eternal struggle would appear to any outsider, not that any existed, to be the thought that took up the most time to exposit. So I decided to create books, to come up with letters and such, to write down my ideas, to put them in a real physical form that took no time to reference once created, and could be organized in a way such that it would be clear which thoughts reigned triumphant. At first, my organizational system for these thoughts was to start with the first, and then when another beat it, I would place the winning thought upon the losing thought, so that the best thought would always be on top. But then it became confusing, as a new losing thought would be placed upon a book it did not beat, and I realized that I couldn't organize them from best to worst, because some ideas were simply equally invalid and others were incomparable. And I thought about setting up a series of different categories for books that all got their own piles. But that would mean that weaker ideas would be placed at the same level of prestige as stronger ideas, simply because their specific category is more niche. So I decided to, instead of figuring out a proper system, to create humanity to do it for me. You've not figured out a good one yet, by the way.
Well, don't blame me. I didn't know that our purpose was to organise and categorise.
I'm kidding. You're all right, kiddo.
Why do you do that?
Do what?
That thing that you're doing right now. Oh, I'm gonna get myself a sandwich. The I'm kidding thing, or when you say do what and act like you don't know the things you clearly have to know.
It's the way that conversations normally go.
Normal conversations don't tend to include God.
Sure they do. Everyone's God.
And there it is again. Why are you pretending that you don't know what I mean?
I think it's fun. It's silly, but it's following convention. I mean, earlier I told you that Groucho Marx said that reality is bad, but it's the only place you can get a hot meal. But that's not true.
It's not the only place you can get a hot meal.
It's not true that he said it. What that actually is a misquotation of a Woody Allen quote.
Ugh.
Exactly. So I instead said that it was Groucho Marx because it fit the flow of conversation better at the time. I am in this conversation because I want to have a conversation. I want to play the role of a conversational partner because I, like you, because I am you, like to be in situations in which I know exactly what to do. And this is a way for me to do that for a while.
What about jokes?
What about jokes?
Well, they exist very purposefully to break normality. Why is that pleasurable? Oh, actually, can I show you my favourite joke?
Go ahead.
What do you think?
It's iconic, potentially very marketable.
You don't like it.
It's not that I don't like it. It's good. Technically, it is good. It's using very few symbols to create a contradiction, which is at the core of humour, and in a way that nods towards the stupidity of lies. But I don't think that there's enough lead-up to the payoff. By the time you've grasped the concept, the punchline has already washed over you, meaning it's missing any punch at all. But if you manage to create some sort of lead-up to it, this is an incredibly efficient portrayal of an idea or joke. Would you like to hear my favourite joke?
Sure.
Did you hear about the man with a cock as long as his arm?
What?
Did you hear about the man with a cock as long as his arm?
I heard you, I just didn't expect you to like jokes about dicks.
Well, you don't even know what the joke is yet.
Alright then. No, what about the man with the cock the size of his arm?
It's quite sad actually. He was a thalidomide baby.
What's a thalidomide baby?
Oh, never mind then.
Why did you tell it if you knew I wouldn't understand it?
I like telling jokes.
You seem really angry in the Bible, though.
I've come to appreciate the chaos more and more.
But you still like the comfort of a simple conversation.
I like variety.
Which, I guess is what a joke is. A shocking variance that causes laughter.
Exactly. Oversimplistic as an explanation, but it works. Sometimes, though, you just laugh at the joke because it's what you're expecting to do.
That's not real laughter, though, is it?
Sometimes it is. The same concept applies to art. People engage because they're expected to.
I think that's a cynical way of looking at it.
It's not. Someone puts paint on a canvas, tells people that it's important, and they believe him. So then, they look at it for longer than he took to paint it, and they attribute more meaning to it than he did. It's a misfiring of empathy caused by the artist's profession that the work is more important than it is.
You make it sound like it's a bad thing to think.
I think I make it sound like it's a bad thing that people believe liars.
But they only believe liars because they want to slot into comfy roles, which is what you're doing right now. So you can't believe it to be immoral.
This is a brief indulgence, not the majority of my existence.
That doesn't make sense as a defense. A brief stint in immorality is still immorality.
And I think that finding comfort in roles is an acceptable thing to do. Provided the roles are based on mutual agreement and don't contribute to the worsening of reality. There's a peace to be found in compliance.
Have you tried meditating? Since creating the Earth, I mean.
Yes, it's lovely. You notice so many aspects that you wouldn't allow yourself to if you hadn't taken that specific time to relax yourself. It's beautiful.
So why don't you just choose that as your role and do that forever?
Because that doesn't progress anything.
It doesn't need to.
I need it to. I'm happy to use comfy art and comfy conversation and comfy roles to distract myself, relax, reset and rest for a bit. But if that were to become all of existence, I don't believe I could forgive myself. I exist for a reason, so I don't think I would be able to live with myself if I didn't strive towards that reason.
And that reason is?
The same reason as you.
And what reason is that?
Come on. You know why you're alive.
Because I'm alive and I didn't have it within me to change that fact?
That's why you're biologically living. Why are you the person you are?
Well, I tried to keep myself interested and happy, so I guess the reason that I'm the way I am is the purely selfish intention to keep myself happy. But that's obviously within the confines of the morality I've set up for myself, which includes the fact that the less happy I make other people, the more it hangs over me and the less happy I am capable of being. And then the things that interest me most are what makes other people who they are, finding out what other people are, and just talking to people. It's a fine thing to be involved in a conversation.
I couldn't agree more. Do you want to know why I enjoy conversation specifically?
You said it was to fulfill a role.
Sure, but I could do that in any role. I could be a librarian for a day and fulfill a role. The reason that I like conversation is that it allows me to interrogate an aspect of myself that I otherwise couldn't. It's a lovely bit of introspection, and it is my feeling that it's the same reason everyone enjoys conversation. Because it is connecting themselves to other parts of myself. Linking fragments of an incomprehensible whole and feeling more complete as people as a result.
I'd never thought about it that way before.
But you understand what I mean.
Yeah, actually. So God, why did you choose me to speak to?
Well, I didn't want to do anyone harm, and some people just aren't equipped to know that God is real. Surprisingly, not just atheists. But some Christians, upon finding out there is a God, just have a complete breakdown. I suppose that idea of God didn't line up with the reality of the situation. They wanted to imagine me as a big guy in the sky, instead of a force present in everything on Earth. And it causes them to crack.
Have you done that before?
Regrettably, yes.
Didn't you know it would happen?
Yes, but it could have led to something greater once acceptance had settled in.
And it didn't?
No. I think what freaked them out the most was that there is no heaven.
There's no heaven.
Well, there is a heaven, but it's just where I live. Some people have a permanent place in my psyche, but it's still just my house. I live there. Jesus lives there. Some angels, some seraphims, some of Jesus' friends, because he told them they could move in. But it's not the place that most people go after they die. As far as I'm concerned, they just die, and what remains of them is their earthly body, the memories they left behind, and thoughts they inspire.
Shit.
Yeah, I reckon that death gives meaning to life. It lends an immediacy, so I made it exist. You know, back when I started, people could live for centuries, but they ended up doing nothing with their time, really, so I put a limit of about 120 years on it, and I've been fiddling around with that ever since.
So, there's really no such thing as a soul?
I mean, I am the soul. I continue even when others don't.
Oh. That's a shame. Anyway, why did you choose me to speak to?
Right. Well, I knew you wouldn't really freak out. I wanted a conversation. I thought you'd be up for that, and I knew that you weren't going to be doing anything worthwhile tonight. And with most people, I can't know how they're going to react in the long term, and you know how I said I didn't want to cause any harm?
Yeah?
Well, I know that you'll just be a bit startled and then start confusedly laughing, allowing for a final release of dopamine, when I tell you that you're going to have a brain aneurysm.